This is Africa Farming. My name is Samuel Baraza, and of course this channel is focused on new generation farmers and new entrants in farming who are willing to learn new farming practices. So if you're new here, you can take a second or two to subscribe and hit on the notification bell so that YouTube can notify you whenever we release a new video. And to our subscribers, thanks a lot for the continued support and the growth that you actually help this channel to achieve. Now today we want to talk about pine trees and some of the reasons why you should consider planting pine trees in your farm. Remember, there was an episode where we went to a plant nursery and we saw different types of plants that were actually being nurtured. One of them was the pine tree. So today we will focus only on the pine tree. But before we get to that, I want to tell you two fun facts about pine trees that maybe we knew, some of us knew, and some of us did not know. Now, did you know that in most forest fires that are actually experienced in the whole world, one of the only surviving species of trees is always the pine tree? The reason is it has a very thick bark, and whenever there is a forest fire, it sheds its outer bark, and in the process also some of its cones release the seeds onto the ground, and the pine tree is able to absorb nutrients from the burnt ground, and in the process it helps it survive. That is one fun fact that you need to know about pine trees. The second thing is it has some spiritual context to it. Now, for those who are Catholics or those who are very observant to the Catholic faith, you will notice that if you look at the holy purple staff, that staff that he walks with, you'll find that there is a cone, there is a pine cone on top of the purple staff. So it has some sort of Christian feeling to it. And there's something that also we're told that if you enter Vatican City, I've never been to Vatican, maybe those who've been there will tell us, when you enter Vatican City on the gate, there is that cone, like a cone sculpture or something, the pine cone. So it has some sort of a spiritual Christian kind of feeling. Those are some of the two fun facts that I wanted you to know about pine trees. So just why should you consider planting pine trees? Now, the first thing that you need to understand about pine trees is that they provide very, very good shade, right? Actually, if you look at me right now, there's a pine tree behind me. This is a pine tree here, and you can even see the cones are there. We'll be talking about them. So we are not far from what we're talking about. This is a pine tree, and there are many pine trees around where we are. Now, the first thing about when we're talking about pine trees, the shade that it provides. Pine trees never lose their needles. Even in cold weather or hot weather, they always stay with their needles. So whenever you plant pine trees in your compound, it's always it actually provides the best shade that you can ever have. Even where we are, you can see so many other places are actually sunny, or they are actually influenced by direct sunlight. But where I am, I think I'm protected by these and other pine trees that are around. So it provides very good shade when it comes to direct sunlight. So for those people who live in hot areas, pine is one of the best trees that you can consider when it comes to planting. Now, the second reason why you should consider planting pine trees is what we call wind breaking. It has a very nice effect when it comes to wind breaking. Now, they never lose their foliage, even in cold weather. So in such a case, it never allows cold wind to blow through to get to your house. If, for example, you've used it along the edges of your fence. And also vice versa is true. During hot weather, it never allows the hot weather, or rather the hot wind, to break through to come and affect, your homestead. So you'll find that you have a very nice, some sort of niche climate within your particular homestead that is a cause of it being a windbreaker. Another reason why you should consider planting pine trees is because of the privacy. Now, same thing that we've said, they rarely lose their needles, so they are always bushy, always. Even in cold seasons or hot seasons, you'll find pine trees the same way they are. So in such a case, when it comes to privacy, they'll always create what we call a screen that will help you, it will help prevent noise coming from your neighbors. And sometimes also, let's say you also have a party in your home, they'll help avoid that particular noise from getting to your neighbor. So in terms of privacy, pine trees are one of the best trees to consider planting. Now, the fourth reason why you should consider planting pine trees is what we call soil erosion. One of the things you'll notice about pine trees is that they have very deep roots, and these deep roots help hold their soil firmly. So whenever you see pine trees planted and they've actually matured, you'll never see that whole area eroded because they've already held that particular soil together. And also, if you look at, as we've said, they never lose their needles. So whenever there's rainfall, for example, those needles will provide a buffer between that particular rain that actually drops and the topsoil. So it will help avoid any sort of disturbance to the topsoil, because the needles will shade it, will actually prevent the rain from dropping directly onto the soil. So another reason why you should consider planting pine trees is because of the natural scent it gives to your homestead. One of the reasons why most people prefer pine trees, like this one here, when you take it and smell, it depends on the species though. There are some species that don't have a scent, but most of them have a scent. And this natural scent is very pleasing, and it gives some sort of natural air conditioning to your homestead and to your compound. So that is one of the best reasons why you should consider, planting pine trees. Another reason you should consider planting pine trees is because of its wood and timber. For those people who live in rural areas, most of us use wood for fuel, and pine tree has actually been proven to be one of the best sources of fuel when it comes to this wood fuel. So the reason is because they burn very well and they burn easily. And also for those people who are willing to, practice, or rather take a step in what we call carpentry, pine trees provide the best source of timber for your furniture that you can build within your farm or your homestead, whatever it is that you like. Another reason, which is one of the best reasons that most people, considering even the purple stuff that I talked about, a reason that you should consider when it comes to planting pine trees are these things. You see these cones here? Now, these cones can actually be used to make crafts that can be used to beautify either your home or, a place of work and all that. You can come up with a creatively designed piece of artwork that is made out of cone. Now, for those people who are into basket weaving, if you find there's a species of pine that have long needles, this one, the needles are not as long and thick, but there are those species that are long and thick. They have long and thick needles, which you can actually use in basket weaving. So pine trees are actually good when it comes to also making crafts that can be used within your farm, and you can even do crafts that you can sell to people as a source of beauty. Yeah, so these are just some of the reasons why you should consider planting pine trees, or rather some of the advantages. Now, for every advantage, there's always a disadvantage. Now, one of the disadvantages of pine trees is that they have very deep roots, and their roots actually always penetrate different places. So it's not always recommended to plant pine trees close to your house or close to fittings or pipings that you've installed next to your house, because they will actually be able to damage them because of their deep roots. So always plant your pine trees away from your homestead or away from those places where you've lined up your pipings or any installation that appears underground. Yeah, another thing is pine trees are affected by what we call pine wilt, which is caused by a nematode that is brought about by beetles. So this particular disease actually makes you see these green needles, it makes them turn red. And once that is done, there is no cure for that. There is no treatment or whatever it is that you can do to salvage that situation. So the only option is to cut down that particular tree from the roots, cut it down, and either burn it or dispose it well, so that it does not spread to other trees. Now, remember, I don't know if you guys remember when we were young, we used to go to pine trees. There are pine trees varieties where we'd go and get those, you call them sap or what? The glue, the gummish thing from the back of the tree, and most of us would eat them because they are edible and very sweet. Now, there are some toxic pine trees that you need to be careful about, because when you eat that from those particular species, you may end up having digestive issues, and sometimes might even cause, in serious cases, they might cause death. So some of these species include Norfolk Island. There is what we call ponderosa. There is what we call yew. There's balsam fir. There's Monterey, among others. There are so many. So when you're going to buy your pine tree, make sure you buy one that is the edible one. We call it the edible one. It's not that you're eating the pine tree, but some parts of the pine tree, sometimes young kids can go and, take those things and eat. Make sure you get the non-toxic species. Now, when we talk about the lifespan of these pine trees, in terms of maturity, let's say you've planted it today, in terms of maturity, they take around 9 years to mature. And when I talk about maturity is when it gets to that point where it no longer grows, but it just stays the way it is. Where you can say, now I have a tree that I can cut down and provide timber or fuel. They take around 9 years. But when you're talking about the lifespan of a pine tree, most of them are known to be, to have a lifespan of between 100 and 200 years. But we've had cases where some pine trees have gotten even to 1,000 years. One of the oldest pine trees to ever have been recorded in terms of its existence was 4,000 years. Can you imagine? So don't worry about planting pine trees. They will always outlive you. So if you plant a pine tree today and you take good care of it, don't ever worry that at some point it will die or, it will always outlive you, because we humans don't live past a certain, age. So now there are two ways in which you can grow your pine trees. When you're talking about planting, you can always grow your pine trees from a sapling or from a seed. Now, for us at the farm, as you've seen, we've done from a sapling because that's the easiest. But for those people who want to grow from a seed, how do you just do that? What you do, you get the seeds from these cones. These cones always provide seeds when they are mature. Get the seeds, place them in water, then dry them, then get a mud pot, then place some, fertile soil in it, and just beneath that top part of the soil, you can now plant that particular seedling, and you'll find, that particular seed, not the seedling, and you'll find that the seed of the pine has a pointed side. So make sure when you're planting, the pointed side faces downwards, right? Then make sure you place that mud pot, where there is sunlight, and water regularly. Now, once we have one of the needles coming up, then it's always good to transplant it to a bigger pot so that it can grow freely until it gets to a point where now you can transfer to the farm, right? Now, for those who are growing the sapling itself, either from the bullet ball or the polythene, there's a name for it. There's a polythene. When you go to any tree nursery, there's that polythene bag. So when you're going to plant, ensure that if you're planting the seedling, keep a distance. Let's say if you're planting a whole fence with many seedlings, keep a distance of between 6 to 12 feet between two pine trees. This is just to allow that they grow freely, to have easy maintenance, and to avoid, getting in the space of the other. As I've told you, they actually create very nice shade. So it's always good to have them wide apart, between 6 feet to 12 feet apart. Now, once you dig the hole, make sure the hole that you dig where you want to plant has the same height as the bullet ball or that polythene bag where the soil is always kept. So make sure it has the same height as that bullet ball or the polythene bag. It shouldn't go deeper than that, so that it allows the trunk to actually grow out of the soil very well. And make sure when you're handling the sapling, don't hold from the trunk, always hold from the bottom, right? Because if you hold from the trunk, you might actually affect how it's growing within that particular environment that it has already been provided for. So basically that's how you grow your pine tree, either from the seed or from the sapling, right? So whichever you decide to use, that's up to you. But for us, we prefer, if you go to a tree nursery, get the sapling, because it has a higher rate of survival as compared to when you get the seeds and start planting yourself. And of course, it will take a shorter time to get to maturity. Now, whenever you plant your pine trees, make sure that they actually have access to sunlight, because pine trees love sunlight. Pine trees love sunlight. And the reason why you plant pine trees, especially along the fence, is to provide shade to other, other sort of live fence that you'll plant, like bougainvillea, K-apple, which we'll be talking about soon. So the reason why you have pine trees along the fence is also to provide shade to these other plants that you'll plant along the fence. But just make sure where you plant, it has access to sunlight, because pine trees love sunlight. So in Kenya, if you're in Kenya and you're interested in purchasing a sapling basically is a seedling. There are those that are already very tall, and there are those that are, they're still coming up. So if you choose to get the ones that have just begun being the young saplings, normally the price ranges from around 30 Kenya shillings to 40 Kenya shillings, which maybe in the US dollar system, it's like 30 cents to 40 cents, right? When it comes to the US dollar. For these bigger saplings, you'll find that the price will range between 40 shillings to 100 shillings, or let's say 40 cents to $1 per sapling. So it will just depend on the size of the sapling that you want to purchase to go and plant. So I hope as you consider planting pine trees in your farm, you've learned a thing or two that will actually help you make that decision of whether to choose pine trees or any other tree. But for me, I actually prefer pine trees. I've even planted in my farm. So you can actually consider planting pine trees on your farm, but just make sure if you have a small piece of land, I wouldn't advise you to plant pine trees because of the deep roots that might end up affecting the foundation of your house or the pipings that you've placed. But if you have a big farm, pine trees would actually be perfect, very perfect for you. In case you have any question with regards to whatever it is that we've talked about, you can actually post your question in the comment section. If you have any type of feedback that you'd want us to know about, you can connect with us on our social media platforms, or you can actually post it on the comment section again. And if maybe there's something I've left out in this particular presentation with regards to pine trees, for those experts out there, for me, I'm not an expert, that is just what I learned. So for those experts out there, if there's something that I've left and you feel that other people should know, kindly make sure that you post in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, and if you've not subscribed, take a second to subscribe so that you can be part of the Africa Farming family. And until next time, changamuka na ukulima. Bye bye.